Welcome to Fear and Greed, business news you can use. Today, the annual bill for public servants across the country hits $250 billion. Microsoft to refund millions of dollars after allegations it duped Australian customers. And a treasure trove of Jim Morrisson songs and poetry found in remote Tasmania is returned to the singer's estate. Plus, National Australia Bank's annual profit gets the thumbs down from investors, and it's been a tough few days for Donald Trump. It is Friday, the 7th of November 2025. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, the main story this morning, the country's government's increased spending on public service wages to nearly $250 billion last financial year. That's up 16% over 2 years, and it is the Commonwealth workforce that's growing the fastest.
I think we should say like $250 billion.
I was just thinking that. It just, the scale then just sounds so spectacular.
Over the past 2 years, all levels of government have boosted their wages bill, in part due to wage rises and in part due to hiring more people. State governments are the biggest employer. 77% of public sector employment comes from the states and territories. Commonwealth government comprises 15%, local government 8%. But the Commonwealth government's wages bills has grown fastest, paying $41 billion, 20% more than 2 years ago. So each annually, $41 billion. Canberra now employs, well, not Canberra, the city, but the federal government, now employs 386,000 people, up from 350,000 people just 2 years ago. If you think of that wages bill up 20% more, now part of that is more people. Part of that is increased wages, and you think of healthcare workers and aged care workers, they all got a big jump in pay, which is fair enough. In contrast, the average weekly earnings rose 3.4% last financial year and 4.1% the one before. So at face value, it looks like the Commonwealth spending is running way ahead of the private sector.
These numbers are huge, and particularly among the 6 states and 2 territories. Nearly 2 million people are employed by the states. That is a lot.
I know. Now, most of the jobs are in public administration and safety, so I think policing.
Yep.
Education and training, teachers.
Yep.
Healthcare and assistance, nurses, carers, that type of thing. The surge in spending comes as economists and analysts have criticised the federal government for spending too much. Yesterday, the opposition pushed the point, asking whether government spending is driving inflation. Treasurer Jim Chalmers said no, saying the Reserve Bank had made it very clear in the course of coming to its decision earlier in the week that government spending has nothing to do with it.
Did they?
No. I mean, I don't think the Reserve Bank said that at all.
Okay. Might be reading between the lines there, Jim.
And, I mean, what he's saying is that the last 2 quarters of economic growth, government spending hasn't added to growth and that it's shifting towards the public sector. All that might be right, but when you've added that many jobs, right, you're adding to aggregate demand, you are adding to inflationary pressures. It's just bunkum to say otherwise. The point isn't so much whether it's added to economic growth. It's about how much spending the government is doing. Is there too much public spending? I suspect there is, Michael.
And bonus points for using the term bunkum.
Yes. Isn't that a great word?
Oh, it's fantastic. And it really brings a story like that to life, I think. And all of a sudden, God, I love the fact that this can turn into a Barney, that even public sector spending can become a big political issue, right?
Yeah. And the numbers are just huge. Now, it's hard to argue we need fewer teachers, fewer nurses, fewer carers. I suppose what you need to do is make sure that every cent spent is spent wisely. Also, productivity rates in the public sector are really low compared to history, but also compared to the private sector. And that's a real problem.
Yeah. You know what it is. It's bunkum.
It's bunkum, Michael.
There we go. Now, National Australia Bank, Sean, has reported a drop in net profit for the full year to the end of September, though boss Andrew Irvine says there is good momentum in the country's second largest lender.
The bank reported an annual cash profit of $7.1 billion, slightly below expectations, and an unchanged final dividend of 85 cents a share. Its share price, though, finished the day down 3.4%. Analysts concerned about higher costs and a jump in bad loans. Irvine said the bank was making good progress in key target areas, business banking, driving deposit growth and strengthening home lending via its own sales force. NAB is the country's largest business lender, 22% market share. It is facing stiff competition from Commonwealth Bank and Westpac. As a result, its profit margins in that part of the business are definitely being squeezed. Expenses were higher, in part because of a $130 million cost after the bank was found to be underpaying its employees. Its net interest margin from just doing its normal job, so effectively its profit margin, fell slightly. Irvine nominated housing as Australia's biggest societal and policy challenge.
Great interview today, Sean. Coming up after the show, Fear and Greed Q&A features NAB CEO Andrew Irvine.
Great chat with him. I loved his comparison of National Australia Bank wants to be the Toyota of the banking sector.
Yeah.
Then we ask him whether he likes being a National Australia Bank CEO. And he has a mixed response. Well worth a listen.
It's a really good chat. It is coming up after the show, so stick around for that one. Now, Microsoft will refund millions of dollars to Australian customers after the consumer watchdog alleged that it duped 2.7 million Aussies into paying for more expensive software plans that included the CoPilot chatbot, even if they didn't actually want it.
Microsoft wrote to customers yesterday apologising to those affected. The tech giant said it should have been more transparent about the experience of a cheaper, or the existence of a cheaper plan. For those who did not think its artificial intelligence features were worth paying more for, customers can request a refund before the end of the year. Of course, last week, the ACCC alleged that Microsoft concealed the option to switch to a less expensive subscription known as the Classic plan, which didn't include CoPilot. That's what kicked this thing along. What this case really highlights, though, the challenge for groups like Microsoft and Alphabet/Google, other big tech companies who want to upgrade their customers into paying more money to get a payback for the hundreds of billions of dollars they're spending on AI and data centers and infrastructure. It's not necessarily going to be that easily.
No, it's really not. Big start to the show, Sean. Microsoft's embarrassment, NAB results, political bunkum. Had to get it in a third time. We've got a lot more still to come, though. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Australia's trade deficit with the United States in September was $1 billion, meaning we buy more from the US than we sell to it.
So, if we have any trade negotiations coming up, it's a pretty good position to be in. The latest Bureau of Statistic number shows we shipped $3.1 billion worth of goods to the US, imported $4.2 billion from that country. Overall, Australia ran a global trade surplus of $2.8 billion in September, driven by gold exports and other commodities.
The federal government passed legislation yesterday for its new environmental laws through the House of Reps. That was the easy part, though.
Yeah.
The hard part, well, for anything here, is going to be getting it through the Senate.
Exactly. Environment Minister Murray Watt said he's still hopeful the government can pass its green tape laws before the end of next week. That's the end of the parliamentary year. Why is the parliamentary year finishing on the 14th of November? I don't want to get on my high horse here, but
Go for it. Climb on up, Sean.
It is bumpkin.
Yes.
That
sure is.
We still have 5 or 6 weeks till Christmas. Oh, ouch. Is that all? So 6 weeks till Christmas and Parliament stops sitting. We can't get the legislation. So they're negotiating with Coalition Greens on that. He says that privately they're more moderate than what they're saying publicly. But at the end of the day, why do we have to get it through by the end of the next week? Why can't we have another 4 weeks of parliamentary sitting days?
Parliament should run more like a business, right? Run right up to Christmas. If you said to most businesses, shut down now, you don't get to trade between now and Christmas, there'd be an uproar.
There would be an uproar.
Oh, outrageous.
You're right.
Oh, God. I've joined you. This has now become a high horse for two, Sean.
There is not much room up here.
It's cozy. It's more of a pony. Building materials. Sorry.
A pony?
Just because of the scale with two of us on it, I figured it looks more like a pony because it's two people. So it's
rather than the high horse, the high pony.
Yeah, it's just a step over one rather than needing to climb up onto it. Building materials group James Hardie was hit with what's known as a speeding ticket on the ASX yesterday. That's because its share price fell as much as 17% in early trading to a 5-year low.
So when a stock moves really sharply, like falling 17% really quickly, the ASX steps in, says, anything running around that shareholders should know about? James Hardie said a probable, was it would be cut from the MSCI Australian indices at the close of business yesterday. That's because it's shifting its primary listing to Wall Street. Not being part of the MSCI index means passive investors are less likely to hold it. Also, some of its new subsidiaries from its AZEK building materials group in the US have downgraded their earnings. James Hardie didn't tell us that yesterday, but that is the truth of the matter. James Hardie now has the unwanted title of being the third worst performing stock on the ASX over the past year, for top 200, I should say.
The third?
Yeah, so it's probably like better than the second worst.
Who's that? Oh, I'm
That
going to have to ask you the second and the first.
Treasury Wine Estates wins that one.
Mm.
The worst, Plumbing Supplies Group, Reece, down more than 50%. It had a horror result a couple of months ago, hasn't recovered. With James Hardie down yesterday 13%, it is now the third worst performer. And remember, we loved James Hardie a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's a long way to fall in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, James Hardie aside, how did the ASX perform yesterday?
The broader S&P ASX 200 closed up a bit, 0.3% to 8,828 points, mostly thanks to the materials sector, including big three miners, which all rose around 2%. Energy stocks were higher. Tech and consumer discretionary stocks broadly lower. Wesfarmers Goodman Group were both down.
How about this one? The lost songs of legendary rock singer Jim Morrisson that turned up in a house in, of all places, remote Tasmania, have now been returned to his family in the US. This is a cracker of a story.
It is a great story. Labelled as unreleased or never released, the reel-to-reel recordings were found in the Huon Valley home of US music producer, the late John Haney, according to The Australian. Haney, a producer, mixing engineer and sound designer who worked with The Doors and its frontman, died in his adopted island home in September 2023. Among a treasure trove of recording equipment found were these reel-to-reel recordings. With Henry labelled them, suggests there's about 6 unreleased Morrison tracks. One's called Whiskey, another's called Wild Woman. Very Jim Morrisson.
Seems entirely appropriate, right?
Yeah. So they've hit the executor of the estate has done a deal. The Morrison family will make a donation to Haney's favourite charities, and as a result, they will get back these recordings, which is pretty cool. At least one tape was recorded after Morrison left the Doors. In one recording session on Morrison's 27th and last birthday on December 8, 1970, basically they're having a few drinks, everyone got drunk, while the tapes were still running.
Oh.
And that's what's recorded. Jim Morrison died in July 1971. Sadly, far too young.
What a story. Okay, turning to international news now, Sean. It has been a slightly rough week for US President Donald Trump. Midweek, the voters of 4 different states voted in Democrat candidates for office, just as the president's approval ratings fell below 40%. Then you've got the Supreme Court appearing somewhat skeptical of Trump's tariffs.
It's not an easy job. Spare a thought for the big fella.
The big fella.
So we had the election of a Democrat as mayor of New York. We had Democratic governors elected in Virginia and New Jersey. There was also a majority in the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania that ended up being Democratic. There was also the Californian vote where the Democrat option was voted in. Then we had oral arguments heard in the country's Supreme Court on Donald Trump's tariffs. We're reading the tea leaves here, but analysts basically said the justices appeared skeptical of the legal basis for Trump's tariffs. Then the US was forced to cut flights by 10% at 40 airports because of the government shutdown, which is now the longest shutdown in history. Earlier in the week, we ended up having those food stamps cut for many families. Polls suggest the Republicans are shouldering most of the blame for this, not the Democrats. Offshore, Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday said he may restart nuclear weapons tests in response to Trump's decision to resume testing. Just not a good few days for Donald Trump.
And I don't reckon this next story will kind of make Donald Trump much happier, right? NVIDIA chief executive Jensen Huang has warned that China will beat the US in the artificial intelligence race thanks to lower energy costs and looser regulations.
So speaking to the Financial Times, Huang put it pretty plainly, China is going to win the AI race. Full stop. Or period is probably what I should say. His comments come after the Trump administration maintained a ban on California-based NVIDIA selling its most advanced chips to Beijing following a meeting between Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping. So, he's a gripe to bear, Jensen Huang, on that one. The NVIDIA chief said that the West, including the US and UK, was being held back by cynicism. We need more optimism, he said. Huang singled out new rules on AI by US states that could result in 50 new regulations. He contrasted that approach with Chinese energy subsidies that made it more affordable for local tech companies to run Chinese alternatives to NVIDIA's AI chips. He didn't mention emissions from those energy companies either, by the way.
No, of course not. Bumper show today, Sean. A bumper interview coming up next, and Fear and Greed Q&A with NAB's Andrew Irvine. It is coming up in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is where you sign up for the Bumper Daily newsletter as well. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It is Friday, the 7th of November, 2025. Make sure you're following the podcast, and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.